All right, everyone. So we got a betting preview here for Iowa versus Iowa State. Now, this game is one of the most interesting, I think, of Saturday because really there's kind of a obvious bet and that makes me like the other side even more. So let's start as we always do by just giving you the odds and why each side can cover. So we're going to start with Iowa plus 3.5. The total for the game is over 42.5, and the money line is plus 145. So for Iowa, how can they cover? What is their path? Well, for starters, Iowa State's defense up to this point hasn't necessarily been lights out, especially when we factor in that K State, the team that they beat in week 0, they did not look good in their last performance. They were able to pull out a win, but they did not look very good. So I think we still don't know exactly what this Iowa State defense is. We know what their offense is, and that's really good. But the defense, there probably are still some questions. And, like I said, when we look at what they did against K State, it looks a little bit less impressive knowing how K State looked in their second game. At the time I was taking notes, this might have changed a little bit, but at the time I was taking notes on this game, 82% of the bets were on the Iowa State spread. A lot of people are feeling like I do, which is this is kind of an obvious Iowa State spot. That's kind of an issue, right? That makes me kind of reconsider a lot of these things. Um, the QB play for Iowa is supposed to get better this year, right? This has always been the kind of the question. Iowa's defense has been elite, but what can the offense do? Now, I have to say, I did, bet on Iowa week 1, and they just, look, they started out a little bit slow. They didn't cover the spread. They did win 34-7, but this was just not a team that I watched and said, yeah, this is a much improved offense. But this is gonna be a test, right? Week 1 was week 1. This is now week 2. We will see, is that going to be what we're looking for? So Iowa State's pass blocking, just if you look at the PFF grades from the first game, the pass blocking hasn't been great this year. If Iowa can get that going, get some pressure, slow down the offense, they're going to be in a chance to cover this game, especially here at 3.5. So this is what I wrote for Iowa. There was a ton of hype around Iowa State. They have looked great in their first 2 games, and now everyone is on them. People might be overlooking an Iowa team that has a great defensive year, after great defense year after year, and if they can make this game ugly, they could win, right? And I think that still holds true. Now let's flip over to Iowa State and what they could do to cover this game. Well, for starters, we are yet to see this major improvement from Iowa. They won week 1 against a bad team, but 34-7. But that doesn't tell the whole story, right? I usually look at what's the spread, which in this case was 39.5, and were you able to cover that? And the answer to that is no. And watching that game, they picked it up in the second half a little bit, but things just didn't look phenomenal for them. At times on the offensive end. And when I mean phenomenal, I mean, look, you put up 34 points, you win 34-7, you had a pretty good game, but it's just not the improvement I think that we may need. And if that's the case, and Iowa State can put up points, I'm just not sure if Iowa State could score. How is Iowa going to be able to keep up with that pace? The offense has been explosive for Iowa State. Look, they found a way to win week 1 against Kansas State, which, like I said, that win looks a little bit worse than it did at the time now because of how Kansas State played in week 1. But then they come out and they drop 55 in a game that they were only favored by 17, or they were favored by 16.5. And they beat the team 55-7. So this is an offense that's been explosive. They've covered both spreads. And so far, Vegas has not caught up with them. And I do think if you're just looking at the performances so far and not projecting anything out, Iowa State has looked like the far more impressive team. As good as Iowa is on defense, they struggle on offense. Iowa State does not have this problem. If Iowa State gets big plays and scores, it'll be tough for Iowa to keep up. So that's kind of the little write-up I had about that. So I'm not going to look into prop bets because I just don't individually know that, it's a little bit tougher to know. So I'm not going to get into individual prop bets, but I will give my play and which side I'm on. I'm going to be taking a risk here, and I'm going to be going with Iowa. Now, this is one of those bets that's completely based off of where I'm seeing the money come in. This is completely based off the fact that, it's almost like, you're watching the stock market and you're just like, I can't put my finger on it, but this team's stock is just a little bit too high. And when you're getting a number like 3.5, which is so much better than 3, this is so much better than 2.5, right? We're getting 3.5. That means a field goal game and we win. And remember, last year, this was a 1-point victory for Iowa or Iowa State. The year prior, it was a 7-point victory for Iowa. The year before that, it was a 3-point victory for Iowa State. So these are games that remain relatively close. There was only one double-digit win in the last five, and that was Iowa winning by 10. But there was only one double-digit win in the last five, and three of the last five have been by less than 3 points. So it just feels like, when you're getting this number, when you know this is a rivalry, and all Iowa has to do is really make life miserable for Iowa State. If they could do that and if this is a low scoring game, Iowa is going to cover the spread. If it's a high scoring game, then I think we're likely to see it go the other way. But like I said, this is completely a gut pick of just fading what seems like would be an easy pick of Iowa State at home, -3.5, 2-0, and has looked very good in both games. But we're going to be rolling with Iowa in this one. So thank you all for watching.